And also, I don't like at the moment that like it is almost like a cool thing to do. It's almost like you find people saying like, "Oh, I just ghosted him," or "Oh, I just ghosted her," and it's almost like people gloat about it, and I really don't like it. And when I hear people say like, "Oh yeah, well I've just had to ghost him," I feel a little bit sorry for those people because I think it's definitely a behaviour on them, not a behaviour on the person that they are ghosting. Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Up for Air with myself, Lou. For everybody that is watching this episode, welcome to an accurate representation of what the UK weather is like at the moment. It is just so grey, and I've struggled so much with the lighting for this episode. I've got so many ring lights on me to try and brighten up my room. I've opened the blind to let some more natural light in because when this room is bright and when the sun shines in, it's so nice. But when it's dark and grey, yeah, my whole house seems to be just dark and grey at the moment. So apologies if you are watching this on YouTube. The lighting is not great. But welcome to my Monday. Welcome back. I had a really good weekend. I started the weekend off on Friday morning where I went to do a 14-mile run. Now, if you follow me on my running account, you will know that I had to bail at 5 miles. I'm really not on it with the weather and what I should be wearing to run at the moment. I keep making some questionable outfit choices. But I went for a run on Thursday evening with my best friend Isabel, and I was running in shorts and a top, and I was absolutely fine. And that was at like 7 o'clock Thursday evening. So I got up on Friday, and the wind didn't seem that bad, and it didn't seem that cold. So I was like, oh, I'll put my thermals on, and then I will put some shorts on, put my windbreaker jacket on, and I'll be absolutely fine. And I went to go and run at the reservoir that I love running around, and for some reason, I just didn't think. And the wind coming off the water, together with it being really quite cold, I had really bad wind chill on my legs. My legs were like bright red. And the loop's 5 miles. I got halfway through and I was like talking myself out of it. And I was like, this is horrendous. This is awful. I can't feel my legs. My skin actually hurts. But in my head, I'd like planned and prepped for a 14-mile run. So I wanted to do it. But then I had to think practically like, am I going to get the most out of these miles? Because I'm going to be stopping, starting. And I'm just going to get frustrated because I am so cold. So I finished the 5 miles, jumped into my car, drove to the gym and ran 9 miles on a treadmill, which some people would argue that that was probably worse than running in the cold. However, my gym's had a whole refurb and we've actually got some really good treadmills and they're really comfortable to run on, and they've got all like the terrain response and they've got like big TV screens, so I can like pretend that I'm running in the Maldives or pretend that I'm running in, I don't know, Barcelona or something like that, and I can really switch off. So the 9 miles were okay, but it is annoying when you get into the right mindset of running long and then something doesn't go to plan. And obviously I will hold my hands up and take the blame and say I probably should be running in leggings. But on this occasion, I made a bad outfit choice and I suffered. So that was Friday. And then Friday evening, I was so tired. And I think I keep saying this, I forget how tired marathon training makes you. And my friends were all busy. So I was like, do you know what? I'm just going to take this opportunity to just be quiet and calm and just have a night in. So I had a nice night in on Friday evening. And then Saturday, I went to the run club that I've been going to, the All Girls Run Club. If you are watching this and you're a runner and you're like, oh, I don't want to, I'm a bit nervous about joining a run club. Or if you know as a girl, there's a girls run club near you or just a general run club, please start going. I have started going to this run club on a Saturday morning and it is called The Space to Run, and it's just a big group of girls. And on Saturday, I was having a bit of a heavy day and I could feel my anxiety was like a bit fraught. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to get up. And even though I ran 14 miles the day before, I was like, I can just do a 2.5K. So they do a 5K and a 2.5K. So I was like, I'm just going to get up and just do the 2.5K because it can be a nice shakeout for my legs. I feel fine. So off I went to run club. And the minute I got there, I was running late, shock as per my life. And so I had to join the 5Kers, and I was like, oh no, I don't know if I've got 5K in my legs. I don't want to push them. So I started running, and immediately, like, just all my anxiety just went away. I dropped back and started running with a girl who had got 2 children. And she was like, I just wanted to get out and just do something for me. And she was just doing the 2.5K. And we were just talking, and it was so nice to just talk to somebody different and talk to somebody that didn't know you. So the fact that I was probably a little bit anxious, people weren't like, oh, are you okay? Like, do you feel okay? Like, you're a bit off. I didn't have to be like, oh, I'm just having a bit of a heavy day today. I could just be myself and just be a little bit more quieter, a little bit more reserved. And then in the evening, I went to the rugby. One of my friends invited me. He plays rugby for the local town, and he was like, do you want to come to the rugby with us? Like, obviously it's the Six Nations where we're going to be watching it in this pub. Do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, okay, fine, I'll come. And again, sometimes I just want to be around certain people, and he is one of those people where I can just be around and just be emotional if I want to be emotional, or be sad, or be really happy, or whatever. I feel so secure and so safe around certain people, and he is one of them. So I was feeling a bit sad, like I said, and so I was like, yeah, do you know what? I'm going to go out. Drank far too much Prosecco. Just drank so much Prosecco. They just kept arriving to the table, and I was like, who is buying all these bottles of Prosecco, like the mini bottles of Prosecco? So woke up yesterday with a little bit of a Prosecco hangover, and me and a couple of my friends just came back to mine, and we sat talking for hours. It was like we were like girls at a sleepover. We were just talking for hours about everything. So I didn't get into bed till quite late, and then woke up quite late on Sunday morning, which was so nice because I very rarely have lie-ins. I'm quite regimented with my routine. I like early mornings. I like feeling like I've been productive. But yesterday I slept in. I got out of bed at about 11 o'clock and then like potted around the house. And I just did adult admin, as I call it. I had a really, really, really nice weekend. And sometimes I get a little bit worried because I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to wake up on Monday and I'm not going to feel like I want to do anything. I'm not going to be productive because I had a heavy weekend. But like today I actually feel fine. And I think I'm still, and I know I talk about it and touch on it a lot, I'm still sort of trying to work out the relationship that I have with alcohol in terms of like having happy days and having sad days. And like, you know, I would ordinarily tell somebody if they were having a sad day probably not to drink, but like I said, I was drinking in an environment where I felt like if I needed to get upset, and I did get a little bit upset on Saturday night, but I was around the right people. They were saying to me like, you know, you just sleep it off, it'll be fine, you'll feel fine in the morning. And they were absolutely correct. And they've known me for a short while, well, they've known me for like 2.5 years, but they have got to know me quite well, and I've been quite open with them, and it's just really nice to have a group of friends like that. So that was my weekend, and then I've woken up this morning, and I think if you've been here for a while, you know that predominantly Mondays have always been a day where I used to work 10-hour days on a Monday just to have like a little bit more of a relaxing day on Friday. So I like to, if I've not worked all weekend, I like to hit the ground running on a Monday. I like to get loads of stuff sorted. I like to be really productive. And obviously I spoke last week about how I started recording on a Monday, and it just feels like I kick off the week in a really positive way. And I think that is good because then my energy comes through a lot better through these videos and through these podcast episodes, because I'm in a good mood and I feel like I'm going to smash this week. So hopefully then that kind of like relates back to you guys. I'm actually going to go to a Pilates class tonight, and I'm going to go out for a walk because that's the kind of week that I want to have. I want to start this week being productive and feeling good. So I'm going to carry that through the actions that I'm going to do today. And so going to a Pilates class and going for a walk sets me up for feeling like I've been really productive on the first day of the week, and that was hopefully like then trickle throughout the whole week. And I've got a lot of things that I need to get done this weekend as well. Like I know that I've got a busy weekend, so I'll probably have next Monday off, which will be quite nice. So yeah, that was my weekend, and now is Monday. So this week I'm going to talk to you about ghosting. Now, this is a topic that comes up on my TikTok and on my Patreon a lot. And I cannot believe the amount of people that I talk to that exes just ghost them out of nowhere. And it isn't something that I dealt with. My breakup was like, he left, he didn't ghost me, but he didn't really give me a lot. that when I look back on the messages between us, there wasn't a lot of communication going on when he left, because I said, you know, I'll give you as much space as you need. I did give him a lot of space, and then it got up to like the 2-3 week mark, and I was like, something's not right here. So I can honestly say my ex has never ghosted me. However, I know how frustrating it can be if your ex doesn't reply. So I'm going to split this episode down into 2 parts. The first part, I'm going to talk to you about ghosting, what it is, why people do it. Because when I've spoken to my therapist about this, and like when I've said, you know, I've got a lot of people that talk about ghosting, and yes, I didn't experience it, but I had very little communication around the first sort of 3-4 months of our breakup. It was kind of like pulling teeth. I didn't really know where I stood or like what was going on. There was like very little communication. My therapist went into it with me, so I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to talk to you about ghosting after a relationship, how I would cope, how I did cope, about clawing for closure basically. And then in the second part of the episode, so if you're here because you want to talk about ghosting, the first part I'm going to talk about why people ghost you, relate it back to long-term relationships. The second part I'm going to talk to you about ghosting after dating, because that is also a thing. And a lot of people will say to me like, I'm so worried about being ghosted, I don't want to be ghosted, or like they say I've been ghosted in the past and like I've not heard anything. I was obviously in my dating era a little bit last year, and I did get ghosted, and I was really annoyed about it. And I thought, this is surely not, as adults, this is what we're doing. And I think that was my most frustrating thing. And I think that's what my friends were laughing at, because they were like, Liz, when you actually say it like that you are an adult. And like, obviously everybody's going to be different ages listening to this, but I sat there and I was like, I'm 31. Why are fully grown men ghosting girls at the age of 31? And like, obviously, again, I will just say, I date men. I'm not a man hater, but I just say it from a woman's point of view. Why are we dealing with these 30 plus men who physically cannot text us to say, really liked meeting you, but you know, I'm just not feeling it, or for whatever reason? Because if someone ghosts you, that is their problem, not yours. Like, they're the ones with the problem, not you. So like, I just didn't understand it. So if you're here because you're, you know, struggling with being ghosted after dating, then kind of fast forward. I'm going to say at the, I don't know, 35-40 minute mark of this episode to get the most out of it. But like I said, I am going to talk to you about sort of like the psychology that is behind ghosting in the first half anyway. So you might want to stick around for that. So yes, that is going to be today's episode. It's going to be quite lighthearted. Like I said, my therapist has shared with me some quite interesting things about cognitive behaviors around like ghosting and stuff. And I am that person that like, I try not to therapyize everything. Like, try not to deep dive into certain behaviors every single time they happen. And I try not to like put therapy behind everything. I sometimes think that people act in a certain way because that's the type of person they are. But I do think as well that sometimes actually deep diving into certain behaviors does make you feel better. So hopefully this episode is going to make you feel a little bit better if your ex is currently ghosting you at the moment, or you've been ghosted having, you know, dated somebody, or like your situationship is ghosting you. Hopefully I'm going to tick all those boxes. So without further ado, as always guys, let's get into it. So naturally, as a human being, if you are being ghosted, you are obviously going to then look at yourself and go in on yourself and think, this has got everything to do with me. And also, I don't like at the moment that like it is almost like a cool thing to do. It's almost like you find people saying like, oh, I just ghosted him, or oh, I just ghosted her. And it's almost like people gloat about it. And I really don't like it. And when I hear people say like, oh yeah, well, I've just had to ghost him, I feel a little bit sorry for those people, because I think it's definitely a behaviour on them, not a behaviour on the person that they are ghosting. So like, if you are currently being ghosted at the moment, it's got nothing to do with you at all. And like I said, it's actually really immature and quite embarrassing. And I don't really like hearing people say, oh, well, I had to ghost him. Like, there are certain things that you can do. If someone's being too overwhelming, if someone's texting you too much, if someone's calling you too much, you can just communicate. I think that's one of the biggest problems that society has. People have just stopped communicating, and they've stopped being adults, and they've just gone like, oh, it's just easier to do this. I think it's quite cruel. That's why I wanted to make this episode, because when you Google like how to get over ghosting, people offer the generic advice, and it's nothing to do with you, like just like what I've just said. And they do the whole like, don't stalk them, don't retaliate, don't do this. But sometimes it's really hard to get out of the mindset of like, this is all on me, especially if you've only just met them. It's a little bit different when you've come out of a long-term relationship. And I mean, there were things that my ex did that I was like, I could never imagine you doing stuff like that. You would have literally gone from calling this person saying like, I don't feel very well, or I'm having a really good day today, or oh my God, what do you want for dinner? To like not hearing from this person at all. It is hard to compute. It is hard to be able to get your head around it, because everyone's different. But I know I'm quite an emotive person, and I take things like that really personally and take them to heart. And it often stems from an avoidance behaviour. That's where I'm going to start. I'm going to talk about the attachment theory. And I don't want to talk in depth about this because I have done quite a lot on this. And I've spoken about it in length on my hour-long episode and again on my Patreon. So people with an avoidant dismissive attachment style are more likely to ghost somebody because they struggle to be vulnerable, and they'll often almost freak out if a relationship gets emotionally demanding. So instead of having to sit with it or talk to you about how they're feeling, they just avoid it completely, hence the reason why they're called avoidant attachment styles. So that is where I'm going to start. So people with an avoidant dismissive attachment style are the most prone to ghosting, and they prioritize their independence, they struggle with their vulnerability, and they often avoid deep emotional connections. And when a relationship starts to feel like emotionally demanding, ghosting becomes a way of escaping intimacy and their way of being able to regain control over how they're feeling. Not control over you, but it's how they regain control over about how they're feeling. Because if you think about how you spiral and you can spiral and your thoughts can get on top of you, they also do the same thing. But then imagine having an avoidant attachment style and all these thoughts about being serious and how you feel and talking about feelings and things that you really struggle with overwhelming you. And so you just completely cut something dead because it's okay, it was easier just to cut it off. I'm just going to cut it off. And I hadn't really thought about that. And like I said, my ex didn't ghost me. But when my therapist said that, I understood as to why he wouldn't talk to me about how he was feeling, because it was just easier for him to cut things off and be like, I don't know how I'm feeling. And it's hard because people then say, yeah, I was with them for 14 years. I was with them for 10 years, 6 years, 5 years, 4 years. Why did I never see any of this? And I was exactly the same. I never understood about people's attachment styles. And this is why I rant and rave about the book Attached. It completely changed my opinion and outlook on people's attachment styles within a relationship. My ex had an avoidant attachment style in the entire time that we were together. It never changed. He was always an avoidant. And being an avoidant isn't a negative thing. As long as you know you are, it's not a negative thing. It becomes a negative thing because you can't deal with your emotions and then you end up hurting people. But being an avoidant isn't something to be embarrassed about or have like negative connotations towards, because I was in a relationship with someone with an avoidant attachment style for 14 years. It's just that I didn't understand. I had been in a relationship from such a young age, never been with anybody else, that I didn't understand that people had different attachment styles. I didn't know that I was an anxiously attached person at all. And I would argue that my relationship and my breakup made me anxiously attached. No, it didn't. I'm an anxiously attached person with quite a lot of relationships in my life, non-romantic as well. I'm quite an anxiously attached person when it comes to my friendships. I am that person, but because I've never had to explore any of this, I didn't understand and I took it to heart. And when I started reading the book Attached, I realised that having certain attachment styles isn't a negative thing. And like I said, I don't want you to go away from this throwing into your ex's face that they're an avoidant and that it's bad, because it's not. People just need to understand how to manage their attachment styles. And when you're aware of yours, you become aware of other people's. I'm not going to sit here and say that I would never date somebody that had avoidant tendencies. I'm not going to say that, because I'm more aware now of how their mind works, having gone through therapy. I'm so aware of my attachment style, and the way I manage my attachment style is my lifestyle choices now. So again, alcohol, heightening my emotions. Am I putting myself in a situation where someone's going to leave me and it be like a rerun of things that I then go in on myself and I have to think about, oh my God, it's me again, blah, blah, blah. I will make sure that I am so aware of the situations that I put myself in now and going forward into a new relationship, because I'm fully aware of my attachment style. And like I said, I didn't want to do like a massive thing on this, but a lot of the people that message me say he's an avoidant or she's an avoidant and they're ghosting me. And I used to get shut down quite a lot in conversations. It was like, I'm not having this conversation, so I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to put the phone down now because I don't want to have this conversation anymore. And yes, like I said, I take accountability for the fact that I probably have gone over the same thing over and over again. However, that for somebody who has an avoidant attachment style is going to be really overwhelming. So they're going to run away. And I've realised as well that people have started to say, I don't need to explain myself. A prime example of somebody who has an avoidant attachment style. I don't need to explain myself, because you absolutely deserve an explanation. But the fact that they can't sit in front of you and give one to you is a huge trait of somebody that struggles with their emotions. And just while I'm talking about attachment styles, people that have an anxious attachment style are going to take being ghosted the absolute worst, like 1000%. I can sympathise because I am an anxious person. I am anxiously attached. And like I've just said, like I am anxiously attached with a lot of relationships in my life. And so I understand that the minute that somebody is maybe acting a little bit more distant or says, I don't want to be here, or I'm not talking about it, or I don't have to explain myself to you, I'm then triggered hugely by my abandonment wounds. And I then go into this cycle of just overthinking. And I'll start thinking things like, did I push them away? Was I too clingy? If I reach out, maybe they'll answer. Like, why do people always leave me? That sort of cycle that then I get stuck into. And so I remember my therapist saying to me, opposites do attract. And I'm a big advocate in that, because me and my ex weren't similar really at all. We wanted similar things out of our lives, but actual lifestyle choices, we were not similar. He would always be off throwing himself off of something, doing something adrenaline fueled, and I just wasn't that way inclined. And he loved traveling and going and seeing the world, and I was just not. But we connected on so many other levels. If I'd have known that he had this attachment style quite early on in our breakup, I would have made sense of a lot of his behaviour and a lot of my behaviour quite quickly. Because when an avoidant person ghosts an anxious person, it causes extreme pain, because one partner is trying to get close and the other partner is running away. I used to say to my therapist, I feel like I'm paralysed. I can't get anything out of my ex, and he's just not talking to me how I want him to talk to me about how he feels, and he can't talk to me about it. And I feel like I'm in this emotional state of paralysis, because I genuinely don't know how I'm supposed to be feeling. I don't know how I'm supposed to be like moving on. I haven't got closure. And so again, like I always say, if you haven't read the book Attached, go and read it, because it will blow your mind. It blew my mind. And I remember reading like the 4th page and being like, oh my God, this makes so much sense. And when my best friend went through a breakup, he read it and he rang me and he was like, Lou, I've got it on an audiobook. He was like, I'm driving. I can't remember where he was driving. He was like, I'm literally 5 minutes in and this book is already talking to me. So if you haven't already read it, go and read it. Go and get it on an audiobook. Just make sure that you pick that book up at some point in your breakup and read it, because it made so much more sense to me. And I was more clued up as well when I went to therapy. I was more clued up on the terminology that she was talking about, because I was reading about people's behaviors, not just events. It was like I was getting into learning about how people's minds work. But moving on from attachment styles, if you did want to talk to me about attachment styles, I have a huge episode on my Patreon. I think it's about 40 minutes long off the top of my head, where I talk about my attachment style and what I've learned and how I deal with it. So if it is something that you want to listen to, then head on over to my Patreon. I don't think I've shamelessly plugged this yet, so it's $4.50 a month. The links are on in all of my bios. They get published on a Wednesday, so you get 3 episodes a week in total. And like I said, I did a big episode on being anxiously attached that got a lot of comments, and people thanked me for it because I spoke so openly about being an anxiously attached person. Because like I said, both behaviours shouldn't be negative. You shouldn't feel negative about the way that you are and the way you present yourself in a relationship, in any relationship, not just a romantic relationship, but in friendships as well. Like, it isn't something that you should be embarrassed about. It's just, you just have to learn how to deal with it. And like I said, my ex didn't ghost me. However, a lot of these behaviours became present in different situations, which is why I've been able to put this episode together, because I think a lot of these behaviours come out when somebody does ghost you. And what you have to remember is that your ex might be sort of portraying that they're finding this easy and finding this whole breakup thing just so easy because, you know, they've just been able to forget you. They've just been able to, you know, just move on. But they are going to be struggling with a form of mental discomfort without a shadow of a doubt. And I remember someone saying to me, like, certain people will be able to cover up their emotions better than others, and you're just the type of person that wears their emotions on your sleeve. Like, if I'm upset with something, you know about it. If I'm angry with something, you know about it. I've been brought up in an environment where I feel really safe talking about my feelings, and my parents made me feel safe about talking about my feelings. Nothing was ever swept under the rug in my family. We all talk to each other. We all talk about how, you know, we might have problems with something. I was brought up in an environment where talking about your emotions was good. My emotions were never suppressed in my family environment, which is why I think I am able to talk about my emotions so openly. But some people don't have that. Some people weren't brought up in an environment where you were able to talk about your emotions. And I'll go further to say that especially men, like, men are seen as being weak if they're talking about their emotions. Hence the reason why there is such a big thing on men's mental health, because the minute that a man says they're struggling, it's like, oh, but you're a man, you know? So if you are listening to this thinking that your ex is like really finding this breakup really easy, they are going to be going through some mental discomfort. But because of that, they have to reframe the situation to reduce the amount of guilt that they feel. And this comes in a form of like disassociating, denial, and then blame. And this was like not massively present in my breakup, but like the disassociation and the denial was like huge with certain situations. And I was saying to people, like, this is horrendous, like what I've gone through is awful. But then my ex was telling part of the story, and it was like, oh well, you know, yeah, it's just something that you have to get on with, isn't it? It's like, you know, it's just life, isn't it? You just fall out of love with somebody. And he was making it sound like this breakup was like not a big deal. So then when I was talking to people that he knew, I was like, am I going mad? Like, is this just life? Like, is this just how, is just, we just need to get on with it then? Have I just got to basically be like, oh, okay, see you later. Cool, right, we're getting on with it. And it's like the disassociation from a certain situation was really prominent in my breakup. I couldn't cope with the fact that my ex was doing things and thinking that they were perfectly fine. And then I would talk to somebody or talk to his friends, or his friends would reach out to me, and I'd be talking about a certain situation and they'd be like, oh yeah, but he said it wasn't that bad. And I'd be like, what? What do you mean? And it got to the point where I was saying to my therapist, how? And she was saying they will minimalize a situation, dissociate with a situation, make the situation seem less emotive in order for them to be able to deal with the fact of the overwhelming sense of guilt that they are dealing with. So when people say, my ex just doesn't seem bothered, oh my God, they are going to be bothered. They are going to be struggling. And I would sit there for days and be like, he's not even bothered. But the reason why I was saying that is because the people that I was talking to, and when I was talking to him, he'd completely dissociated himself with the situation. So he was fine. And this is the same as ghosting. They will make the situation sound less, not important, but less of a big deal. They will minimize the seriousness of the situation in order to be able to deal with it. They've probably said to somebody, oh, we're not talking at the moment, not I've ghosted her. They're probably saying we're in no contact, not I've not reached out to her since the day I've left. They're minimalizing it, and they're making themselves, not portraying themselves as a better person, because that's not what we're talking about here. They're just making the situation less serious to them. So then when people talk back at them about it, they get the validation that they need. So it's almost like, oh, we haven't spoken, but it's best for both of us that we don't speak. And then somebody else speaking to them will probably be like, oh, do you know what? Yeah, they do say that you should go into no contact, and they do say that you should probably minimize contact. And all of a sudden, they're getting the validation back from the people that they're speaking to, because they haven't told the whole truth, and they've like completely disassociated themselves with what they've done. So all of a sudden, you are faced with talking to people that say, oh yeah, he said that, you're not on talking terms at the moment, like you might be able to talk in the future. And you're going, what? He hasn't spoken to me since the day he left. Like, he's completely cut me off. He's completely ghosted me. What the fuck? And these are things that you don't think about when you are going through a breakup, because you're just being told, oh, he said that you aren't talking. And then you're getting angry because you're like, why are you lying? But it's deeper than that. They're disassociating themselves because they cannot deal with the mental discomfort that they're going through, because they can't deal with their actions. And if you're going through anything like me, and this is one of the things that I struggled with a lot, is that my ex compartmentalized his life hugely. And I've done a lot of therapy work on this, because I was being told it's just part of my life. It's just part of life. This is just life. And whilst, yes, that is true, I was then being told it's just one part of my life. You'll always be part of my past, but I've moved on now. And it was so quick. And I was like, what? Like, I'm suffocating. I'm trying to sell the house. Like, I'm trying to find somewhere to live. I'm scratching about, like, he had somewhere to live. I didn't. I was like sitting on Rightmove every day trying to find somewhere to live, trying to like sort my life out. My life just seemed like it was in complete and utter chaos. His just wasn't. And then all of a sudden, I was being told that he was in a new relationship and that it was just part of life. It's part of life. You just move on. And I was like, and it was almost like, what? It's just part of life and we just move on. It's like 14 years of my life. And if you've been in a long relationship, it's like 10 years of your life, 6 years of your life, 5 years of your life. You just move on. This is how these types of people that have these behaviors cope with what they are doing. And there are so many people out there that do it. I had no idea. The mental reframing that they are doing helps ghosters avoid guilt. It helps them avoid responsibility. It helps them avoid discomfort. And to be quite honest, if they've done it once, I fully believe that they will do it again. 1000%. I think they are more likely to repeat these toxic cycles in the future. And that is why, going back to my episode last week, that is why you can find yourself in a cycle that has absolutely nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with your ex, everything to do with their behavior. And again, I always say, like, I don't want to therapyize everything. Some people are just not nice people. But I think knowing the deeper reasons why some people behave in certain ways is really important. And I still now hear things where I think, God, that behavior hasn't changed. Like, that hasn't changed. And I speak a lot more about it on my Patreon, where I talk about, I hear things and see things that actually make me feel better, because I'm like, God, that would have never have changed, And so moving on to the second part of this podcast episode is where I wanted to talk about, now you know the reasons as to why somebody might ghost you, how to deal with it. And also, like I said, for anybody that is here listening to this about, you know, going on a date and then being ghosted, I want to just talk on that a bit, because I think being ghosted is really easy these days because of the digital culture that we're in. Ghosting is so much more common and so much easier to do these days because we have the instant communication. And I am so guilty of doing this. If I hear somebody that I don't know, I'm like, oh, just Facebook her, or like just put her on Instagram, or just put him on Instagram, or like find them on LinkedIn. And how easy it is to find somebody, it is just as easy to cut somebody out because it's just all instant. So, for example, you have their phone, you have their Instagram, you have them on Facebook, and you go out for one day, or for example, you're in a relationship with them. I think it's a little bit different when you've been in a relationship with somebody because they obviously know where you live, they know where your family lives, they know where your parents live, you know, and I'm going to get onto that just at the end. I'm going to touch on that in the end. But when you've just been on like one date with somebody, you don't know where they live. And, you know, and that's why when I was like in my dating era a little bit, I was quite protective over where I lived because I didn't want people to turn up to my house. But that's just like boot on the other foot. Somebody might not want you to know where they live. So then it's just so easy to just get your phone out and be like, block, one date, block, like completely disassociate themselves with you, no explanation, nothing. And because there is no physical presence, it almost dehumanizes you. It dehumanizes the situation. So you might have gone on one date and thought, God, this is so good. They might have thought, oh my God, like, no. And I think there has a lot to say about the fact that dating apps make it seem like there are so many people in the world, which obviously there is. But like if one thing doesn't suit in a date, it's so easy for someone to just be like, block, next. Let's get back on all the dating websites. Let's try and find another date. And they're almost encouraging, dating apps are almost encouraging this detachment and the dehumanization. And so it makes ghosting so much easier for these people that find it so easy to ghost already. But it makes it a lot easier for them because they can just go online and just be like, block, see you later. And you know, and I've had it done to me. My ex sent me almost like a sort of a final message, and I talk about it on my Patreon how it wasn't a very nice message. He didn't even wait for my reply, he just hit block, so I couldn't reply. So again, it's like shutting me down because I challenged him on something that he didn't want to talk about. So it was like block, gone, I can't contact him. He then didn't have to sit with the fact that he had done something, or the fact that I had found something new out, or whatever the situation was. He didn't have to deal with it because he could just block me. And so he disassociated from it. And this is what these people do. They just disassociate. And again, like I do think that dating apps do make it feel like they are just disposable. It's so easy to just go offline. And, you know, I was sitting on a dating app and then I deleted the dating app. I didn't delete my profile. I just deleted the dating app. And I don't know what happens if people can still contact me and come through, but like they won't be getting a reply because I've got no dating apps anymore. So when you sit there and you beat yourself up about, you know, not getting a second date or like being ghosted for the first date, you have to remember that it's so easy for these people who have probably already in the past found it quite easy to ghost to then do it again. And I do think that getting off of dating apps is healthy. I think it's healthy, but it's unhealthy because my friends will argue like, where are you going to meet somebody? I don't want to meet anybody, but you know, dating apps these days are where people meet people, but it is so easy for that person to then, you know, get in their car after the date. It's so easy for you to get in your car after the date and be like, oh my God, block, and never hear from them ever again. And I do think that dating apps do contribute to people seeing relationships as replaceable rather than worth investing in, because it's like, oh wow, you know, I can just go on a couple of dates and then go on a couple of dates with them and then go on a couple of dates with them, and you know, there's so many options. And I think going back to being in a relationship, this is the same thing, because the people that can do the ghosting are the people that also find it really easy just to jump into something else, because like I said, and you know, I love a process, but going back from the top, if we were to go through it like methodically, it's because they can disassociate, and the minute they disassociate, then they start, you know, making it so that the story is not, they're not lying, they're just dampening down the story, they're just making it seem less traumatic So then they don't have to live with the guilt, and they don't have to live with people saying, oh my God, did you really do that? Because this is a hill that I'm willing to die on, that I don't think enough people challenged my ex on what he did, because I protected him so much. And I don't go into stuff like this. I don't talk about it. I don't really talk about like a lot of the stuff that happened, but I 100% don't think he was challenged enough on his behaviour. But I also think it comes with saying that like the people around him couldn't believe what he'd done. So then it's almost like, if you haven't got people challenging you, and I love the fact that my best friend challenges me quite a lot, and if I say something, he'll challenge me and I'll challenge him, and it's good, it's healthy to be called out on these things. And sometimes when I've made like wrong decisions or bad choices, he's like, why are you doing that? Like, why have you done that? And I just don't think there was enough of that, and there isn't enough of that in certain people's lives. People aren't being challenged on their behaviours because they're able to just say, oh, it's not a big deal, it's not that big deal, it's not that deep. That term needs to be cut from people's vocabulary. It's not that deep. Is so damaging. I hate it. I hate it when people say to me, it's not that deep. Isn't it? But hurt my feelings. Yeah, no, but it's not that deep. On who's, what, yours? Are you me? Like, I just don't get it. I hate it. I hate that term. It's such a, is it like a Gen Z? Such a Gen Z term. It's not that deep. Oh, just no. And so now I've told you about the behaviours, and now you can see that hopefully it is everything to do with them and nothing to do with you. I know that doesn't take the pain away, and a lot of the stuff that I'm saying won't take the pain away, and you'll probably end this episode and think, God, yeah, but it still hurts. I wish I could work miracles and like give you something or recommend you to take something or a drink to make this pain go away. But unfortunately, I can't. However, I can help you create a stronger mindset and give you information that is going to make you think, I don't need to reach out because this is on you, not on me. And so if you have been ghosted, the silence is deafening, actually deafening. And the confusion is unbearable, and not getting closure is unbearable. Like I said, I literally had to go and like almost chip away at my ex to like tell me what was going on in his head. Like getting anything out of him was so hard. And so I know that, you know, not getting closure and getting ghosted is just horrendous. But I'm going to start with what you don't need to be doing to make things easier for yourself. You do not need to be chasing them, because sending endless text messages or calling them off withheld or showing up to their house will not bring you closure. You'll be putting yourself in a situation where you are either, you know, if you turn up to their house, other people could get involved, declining the phone calls, not getting messages back. And, you know, I've messaged my ex in the past and not had a reply, and then messaged again and then not had a reply, and it is demoralizing. If someone has decided to ghost you, this endless contact is probably not going to result in the heartfelt conversation that you want if they've not had the capability to do it the first time round. And I always say, like, I wanted to get back with my ex. I wanted my ex to come back. Of course I did. I didn't want to go through the breakup, and I longed for him to come back. And I think, you know, I talk about the space that you give your ex whilst they've gone. And I would have given my ex all the time in the world if I knew that he was properly going through like what he was going through and not just disassociating himself with it, which I think he did a lot. But I said to him, take all the time you need. You know, I talk about that April being quite a prominent date. And after our friend's wedding in May, that was quite a prominent date where I realised that like we weren't getting back together. And I gave him chance after chance after chance to come back and say like, this is what's going on, this is how I've been feeling, or this is who I've met, or this is what someone said to me that's made me feel a different way. Like, I remember having a conversation with him and he talking about somebody that I'd never even met had given him relationship advice. I'd never even met the person. I wouldn't even know who the person was. If she slapped me in the face, I wouldn't know who she was. And I gave him so many chances to be able to come back and have the heartfelt conversation that I deserved, and it didn't happen. So chasing them and chasing them and chasing them after giving them that opportunity, because I do think that they need opportunity for space. I do think they need opportunity to be able to go away and think about, you know, what they're doing and how they're feeling. But after a while, no, I think they should be coming back and telling you how they feel and, you know, where you're going to go from here. But chasing them and chasing them isn't going to give you that heartfelt conversation if they haven't already done so. That is key here. If they've not already given it to you, what is chasing them going to achieve? It's not going to achieve anything. It's going to hurt your feelings more. And like I said, you know, like with being able to stalk them on social media and everything being so instant and news traveling so fast, news got back to me so quickly, and it was almost like I hated it. I hated being so accessible online. And so many times I wanted to just delete my public profile, delete my running account, because I was so easy to find on the internet. And I did sometimes think, oh God, should I have spoken about my breakup online? Because I was then opening myself up to people feeling like they could tell me certain things. But don't stalk their social media, because watching them live life without you will destroy you even further. We know that. We've spoken about it. We've got onto it. Your healing comes first. If you're contacting them and then stalking them online and seeing them that, you know, they're not answering your phone calls, but they're able to go to the pub. They're not talking to you about how they feel, but they can go for a curry with their mates. It's not going to make you feel any better, because it's so easy to fall into a trap of thinking like, what did I do wrong? But again, like I always say, their behaviour is a reflection on them and not on you. And I always say to people, and I think people find it hard, because obviously, you know, I talk about my relationship and my ex and my breakup, but like if he'd just sat down with me and explained absolutely everything and told me the truth about certain things and did it in a way where he knew that it was going to hurt me, but also he knew that he had to tell me because I needed to be able to move on from us, our relationship after our breakup would be completely different, and I probably wouldn't be blocked, and I still would be doing what I was doing, but our whole friendship would be completely different, because I remember him saying to me like, you were a huge part of my life, I'm always going to be here for you. That doesn't stand anymore, like at all. And I'm very careful about what I say online, but I don't think he saw it going that way, and I definitely didn't see it going that way. But you cannot blame yourself, because it is definitely a reflection on them, because healthy people communicate even when it's hard. And I know that, and I know this because I've had some of the hardest conversations with people and I'm still communicating. And this is why I say, like in my dating episodes, that like I'm really open and honest with talking to people about how I don't want a relationship. And I think it's important to communicate, because there is always somebody on the other side that is going to get their feelings hurt if you don't communicate. That's the hardest thing about breakups. There's always going to be somebody in the breakup that gets hurt, and it's us, and we've got to stick together. Also, don't seek revenge. And I know that people think that I sit and I get revenge by doing this. That is not why I do it. And I hope that it never comes across in a way that this is revenge, because it's not. I do this because I really struggled with my breakup, and you can tell that I did if you listen to my earlier episodes. And you know, I had a horrible day on Saturday because of my breakup, and the urge to expose them and confront them in public or get back at them is so understandable, completely understandable. I am validating that with my whole chest. You can feel that way. You want to turn up to their parents' house. You want to say to them, I'm going to go to your new girlfriend's house and, you know, expose you. I understand all those feelings. However, in the end, it prolongs your pain, because they're just going to turn around to you and say, what are you doing here? Why have you done that? That's not going to change anything. It's not going to give you the closure you want. You want closure. You want to know why they have done what they have done. You want that. You don't want them to hate you. That's not what we're trying to do here. The best revenge is moving forward, like I said in my get a revenge mindset, not a revenge body. The best revenge is to heal. the best revenge is to move forward and to almost start looking at your breakup as a positive. That is the best form of revenge. What we don't want to be doing here with ghosting is turning up to the house and exposing them to everybody just because they won't talk to you. It's not something that you need to shout from the rooftops, because like I said, it's not going to take the pain away or make them want to talk to you more. It's probably going to make them then block you or stop you from contacting them or something along those lines. We don't want to be doing that. That is not the end goal here. And if you are struggling with closure, I do talk about getting closure a lot, and these episodes go hand in hand because you won't get any closure if you are being ghosted. So even though I wasn't ghosted after my ex left me, the contact was minimal and I struggled. So I know that being ghosted after a relationship, and even after a couple of days, is brutal. But this is where you really need to strengthen your mindset and be able to tell yourself and believe that it has got nothing to do with you. And I used to say to my therapist, we're going through a breakup, it's me and him, blah 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 blah. And she was like, no, it's you now. And it was brutal hearing it, because you've gone, you know, for me example, I'd gone through life like it's just you and him and like Liz and someone else, and have to be really careful not to say his name. I was always one with one other. And then when I went through my breakup, I tried to make it as though like we were still going through something together and we were going to help each other through it. And that wasn't the case. It is just you. Like, you aren't together anymore, and this sounds so brutal, but you're not together anymore. And the fact that you are giving them the opportunity to explain themselves after, you know, ghosting you and not talking to you is just going to hurt you more. If they unblock you and say, stop contacting me, that's going to hurt more. And so I know you're sitting in a lot of pain, but sitting in this pain is important. I've done a whole episode on my Patreon last week on sitting with the pain. When you sit with the pain, you realize how strong you are. You realize that you haven't got these qualities, and thank God we haven't got those qualities, because I pride myself on knowing that I wouldn't have been able to do what my ex did to me, to them. I pride myself on that, and I know my parents do as well. And that's what you have to remember. You have to look after you. You wouldn't do this, but that doesn't mean that they wouldn't do this to you, because you are two separate people now, and that's how you have to view your breakup. And that was one of the hardest things that I learned in therapy, but one of the best, because I kept making it a we, and it's not. It's a you. So you doing certain things and you reaching out and you doing all of this, they've disassociated. You then need to then look at you and think, what am I doing that is hurting my feelings? I'm chasing closure. I'm doing this. I'm chasing after them. I'm turning up to the house. I'm constantly hurting my feelings. And it is so easy for me to sit here now and say this because I've done that. But believe me, I sat for about a year in situations that I'd put myself in, that I'd hurt my feelings even more in. I've been there and I've done it, and I understand. You shouldn't be beating yourself up in this. I'm not telling you off. But I'm making sure that I'm allowing you to think about situations differently, so then you don't hurt yourself more. And these things will then contribute to you getting over your breakup. This episode isn't going to make the pain of you being ghosted go away. This episode isn't going to take the pain away after 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But it's going to contribute to you being able to heal from your breakup, and hopefully be one of the building blocks that, you know, you can put into your life, where now if someone was to ghost me, I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's not on me. That's on you. And if you don't want to communicate with me more, I feel sorry for you. And this is where you're allowed to do the whole like I feel sorry for you thing, because if someone was to ghost me now, I'd be like, okay, that's on you. And if you can't communicate as an adult, then that's embarrassing for you, and I feel sorry for you. And you can make your peace with it. And that's what I think you have to do, because you need to remember your worth. You need to remember that you are worthy of being in a relationship with somebody that can communicate their feelings. And, you know, and you will find somebody that communicates with you, and you will find somebody that doesn't just leave you thinking what on earth is going on. That will come to you. It will. And that's why I think it's important to go through these, because this is the lesson that you're taking away from this. You'll be able to now recognize somebody with a attachment style that is maybe avoidant. You'll be able to recognize when someone's trying to disassociate with you, disassociate with a situation. And I just shut it down now. I don't actually give it any time, because I protect myself. And that's a big fat lesson that I've learned coming out of my breakup. So I hope this episode has helped. I have enjoyed doing it. My computer crashed approximately 6 times throughout this entire recording. It's really struggling, bless it. It's such a good little laptop, but I think I'm going to have to upgrade at some point. If you don't follow me on Patreon, I've mentioned my Patreon quite a few times in that episode. Go and follow me on Patreon. There is 2 extra episodes a week, like I said. Loads of good content to get your teeth into. I am going to upload loads of stuff on there today. I'm going to upload all my hour-long episodes. I'm going to upload all my videos over there. It's going to become a hub where people can just join and not have to jump around to like different sorts of apps. I'm also creating a Twitter/X account today, whatever you call it. It was Twitter for me growing up. I used to love tweeting. I'm creating that today as well. So if you have Twitter/X, then follow me on that. I'll put the link on my Instagram so you can follow me on that, and I'll put it in the description of this video when it is uploaded. So follow me there. If you don't already follow me on YouTube and you are an audio listener, please just go over and subscribe. It makes the world of difference for me. And like I always say, guys, if you aren't on my Patreon, then I'll catch you back here on Friday for my hour-long episode. Look after yourselves. Have a good week. Bye.